This is a One Play Wednesday film study to look at how the Baltimore Ravens were able to free up Derrick Henry for a 59-yard run in the third quarter of their 23-16 win over the Cleveland Browns using a unique variation of the Wham trap concept. We'll take a look at this first from the All-22 angle. This is the Ravens' ninth possession. They're down by 6 late in the third quarter. It's a downhill run concept that I think suits or fits Derrick Henry and multiple running backs across the NFL perfectly, and that it gets them moving downhill, number one. Number two, utilizes angles for the offensive lineman and the fullback / tight end. So it's a wham trap concept, and what I mean by that is you're getting a block back on the defensive tackle by the tight end, Charlie Kolar, who went in short motion just before the snap. The way the Ravens block this typically is they ask or task their two most athletic offensive linemen, Ronnie Stanley and Tyler Linderbaum, with moving up to the second level immediately. Some people call this triple trap, in that you actually have 3 trap blocks happening at the same time. The third of which for the Ravens is quite unusual, of course, because they're going up against Myles Garrett. And from the backside of the formation, theoretically, he should not be able to disrupt this play. But were it not for Voorhees getting a piece of him as a potential backside rusher, Myles Garrett could have possibly disrupted the concept. As it is, Derrick Henry hits it downhill, breaks through the second level of the defense. Cleveland was really in, if you ask me, a 4-4 alignment. And I'm actually going to show a couple of things by how the Ravens typically block this, and what makes this one highly unusual, if you ask me, is the fact that Pat Ricard was simultaneously used as a lead blocker on a trap concept. In order to get my point across about how unusual and unique it is, and confusing it still can be at times to watch that play, especially when we get to the end zone angle here in a moment, let me first go through 2 iterations of the wham trap concept, both from 2024, from the exact same formation, albeit different personnel groups. This is, of course, the first snap of the game, Week 4 win against the Buffalo Bills last season. Pat Ricard is set up as a slot tight end. He's going to trap the defensive tackle to his side. Different from the play that I just showed you, where Charlie Kolar kind of went in short motion and trapped the D tackle on the backside or away from the point of attack. Derrick Henry hitting it downhill. They're not blocking the nickel on the backside. And once again, you've got both of the most athletic offensive linemen, and athletic and reliable, I should say, in the form of Ronnie Stanley and Tyler Linderbaum, immediately moving up to the linebacker level to occupy those 2 defenders. Derrick Henry bursting through the first and the second level of the defense, absolutely untouched. We know how this ended up. The thing I want to point out is that this is the backside nickel defender that I kind of talked about a moment ago. And what I mean when I say that is he's unblocked away from the point of attack. Nickel defender out of a 4-2-5 structure typically is set to the field almost no matter what the formation is, and that's the player that the Ravens leave unblocked, rightfully so. He's also the guy who has potentially an opportunity to track down Derrick Henry. Basically, the point is the Ravens know how to block this if you give them a 2 inside linebacker look. I suspect that what Cleveland offered, a 4-4 perspective, is what made it end up looking somewhat anomalous, even though it ended up in the Ravens' favor, a 59-yard gain. Here's an example of it during the Ravens' AFC Divisional Round playoff loss to the Bills last season. Trapping the front side D tackle, it happens to be Charlie Kolar who's involved in this play, but you get a really nice angle view, if you ask me, of a couple of things. Number one, you got the backside nickel defender, Taron Johnson, off screen, totally unblocked, just like the nickel on the previous play that I showed you. First of all, Ronnie Stanley, the backside left tackle, is going to work up to Bernard, the Mike linebacker, essentially. And then Tyler Linderbaum is going to work up to the front side inside linebacker. Technically, it's the will linebacker in the form of Matt Milano. Triple trap function here, in that 3 Ravens are actually executing a trap. Charlie Kolar down on the defensive tackle, the right tackle Filele down on the nose, and then Voorhees oftentimes as the left guard will kind of bucket step slightly. I don't think he does here, and then trap back on the backside defensive end. That's the block that didn't occur in the same manner against the Browns, if you ask me, but you can see how it works out. They get Derrick Henry through the first and the second level of the defense untouched, ends up being a huge gain once again. Same play from the all-22 angle, and then we'll go back to the Browns run concept that Henry busted for 59 yards. Kolar blocking the front side defensive tackle, meaning the guy who's closest to the point of attack, again, as opposed to or compared to blocking the backside defensive tackle like he will when I run the Browns play back here in a moment. I think Matt Milano probably identified this, which is why you see him pointing in the backfield, either pointing at Kolar and or Derrick Henry, but in any case, it didn't really matter. They're still able to get things blocked up with Linderbaum working to the second level. You can hardly see Ronnie Stanley, but he is encompassed in that orange or burgundy square there. Henry bursts through untouched. So now let's go back over the blocking concept and the way that the Ravens get this done against the Browns in the third quarter. Kolar, spot shadowed here, not going to block the front side D tackle like we've shown you on these other iterations. Short motion, and he'll go get the backside D tackle. I think the problem here, in terms of trying to understand what this is that the Browns have 4 inside linebackers on the field. So they legitimately are in a 4-4 defensive structure. Kolar's going to short motion and block the backside defensive tackle. Like I said, Henry downhill. And what makes this confusing the way that it works out, I kind of broke this down during a video earlier in the week, is that 43 is the guy that Linderbaum moves up to and the guy that Ricard goes to engage. We're talking about both of those guys, Ricard and Linderbaum, right here trying to block 43 at the same time. I think it's because, well, who plays a 4-4 in the NFL, right? You may see a 4-4 alignment, but you'll never see 4-4 from a personnel standpoint. In this case, I think it really muddies things up. It's a nice concept. I'd be interested to see how the Ravens block it out of a 4-2 inside linebacker structure, meaning Stanley is working up to the backside inside linebacker. That would be the player who is the nickel in the previous 2 iterations that I showed you, or the 2 against the Bills, I should say. No one blocking 49 Schweschinger, if I said that correctly. And so I think what's happened here is because of the 4-4 look, the Ravens have, they don't necessarily have enough guys to identify, enough guys to get up to the second level and handle all 4 of the inside linebackers who Cleveland presented on the snap. Henry gets loose. It's Denzel Ward who tracks him down. We'll show you the all-22 angle one more time just so you can see the interesting nature of this and why. Hopefully you'll understand it was confusing to me and at least a couple others. So there's Kolar, and the block that confused me and so many others initially was Linderbaum working up to 43 and Ricard looking like he was going to lead. My guess is if there were only 2 inside linebackers, which is typical or normal, then Ricard and Linderbaum would possibly still be assigned to the same guy, and or they would be double teaming essentially the backside inside linebacker. That's the only way that I can interpret this. It's not unusual to see a lead concept whereby there's a dedicated double team, if you will. I did not ever expect to see one on a Wham trap, but that's what we encountered Sunday afternoon. It was a big run that kind of got the Ravens' run game going. It's not that Henry wasn't effective at times during the game, but I thought Cleveland did a fantastic job in the first half especially of limiting the Ravens' run game, number 1, and number 2, really getting after the quarterback. Look, at this point in time, that is Henry's, I think, 4th 100-yard rushing game of the season, 18 carries for 103. Of course, things would look, drastically different if you took that 59-yard run out of there, but it's also his 3rd 100-yard game in the last 5 weeks. At the same time that Kyle Hamilton has been moved up to be the nickel defender on the defensive side, it seems unrelated, right? But I wonder if you can look at it and say the Ravens have kind of dedicated themselves to a different style of play. Derrick Henry's carries Brees Hall, 4.8 yards per carry. Jahmyr Gibbs, 5.2. By the way, he only has 732 rushing yards, and he actually has, he does have 20 less carries than Derrick Henry. But Javonte Williams, 5 yards per carry. Rico Dowdell, 5 yards per carry. Bijan Robinson, J.K. Dobbins, 5 yards per carry. Like I said, Kyron Williams, 4.7. I think Henry's still got plenty of gas left in the tank, and plays like this, if you ask me, kind of illustrate that point. Appreciate you guys' time.